We are live. We are live. We are back. And at this point, I think we are going to hear Senator Ron Hinsdale's amendment or proposal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So while Kirby's pulling that up, if I could say two things about how the housing policy conversation has shaped up around short-term rentals, just for when the conversation turns to short-term rentals. I want to say this on the record. The Housing Policy Committee has never determined that short-term rentals are a bad instead of a good, or that we don't want them to exist in some form or fashion. We look at the data every year when we can, and we had gotten a contract through the Vermont Housing Finance Agency with AirDNA to understand how many short-term rentals there are in each of our communities. Similar to the conversation about second homes, there are certain municipalities that have a high concentration of short-term rentals that is impacting them. And when I was chair of the Housing Policy Committee, would say to them, you may want to consider passing a 30-day or more municipal ordinance around that. But that said, I think as the Economic Development Committee, we've also seen that there is a lot of good that comes from short-term rentals in places that don't have a high concentration of short-term rentals. In places that don't have a high concentration of short-term rentals and have high home ownership vacancy, they actually function as a hotel, where there are not many places with hotels in the state, and they function to provide income to somebody in that dwelling. So our committee tends to look a lot at short-term rental policy, but we would never say that we want to prohibit them in any way. The whole goal of tax policy, I believe, is we should be saying we want to tax something. We don't necessarily want to prohibit it. And the combination of conflicting tax policies ends up becoming both a prohibition and a tax.
Okay. We can tax something to discourage it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's walk through the amendment and we'll see what the proposals we. Okay, this is posted, right?
This is not posted at the moment.
Oh. Can you send it to Charlotte so she can post it?
What page of the bill would it be in?
It's the definition of long term.
100, okay. Page 100, yeah. Got it.
Page 100, same one we've
That's a
been
busy-
on all
busy
day.
page.
Today.
It's a crease if I open my bill. It goes right there. It's a lot of writing.
Do you want me to walk through it?
So we get-
I do. Yes. Yes.
Okay, let's see what this is going to do.
Okay, so as you recall, the language that's in the bill currently is there's three parts. What's in the current bill is 30-day requirement, 30-day increments, and then for cumulatively for 6 months. And then the third part is the modified landlord-tenant relationship. This has three parts, and the first part is if the dwelling unit for which the owner will be required to provide a landlord certificate pursuant to section 6069 of this title, that means that you are required to file a landlord certificate, which means that you have a rental period, at least one rental period of 30 days. That's what that means. Second part is a dwelling unit that is rented from a natural person, that is mean a person, not an entity, like a human being, or from an entity created for a business purpose, which has a legal meaning that means it's not just for tax avoidance. And then to a natural person. So numbers 2 and 3 here are getting at the bona fide landlord-tenant relationship in a different way. That is what they're doing. So the first part is to say it's from a natural person or from an entity that was created for a business purpose, such as a landlord who owns several buildings who created an LLC for the purpose of their landlord business. And then to a natural person. And then the last one is the amount of rent paid is equal to or more than 75% of fair market rent for the municipality in which the dwelling is located. That gets at another component of the bona fide landlord-tenant relationship, which would look at
I can't.
Are you
rent it to
paying-
my kid for $0?
are you paying
$10.
close to fair market rent?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that's what it does, is it's taking out two big components of the bona fide landlord tenant idea and putting those directly into the statute and then having the 30-day period, but by doing it through reference to the landlord certificate. And then it does not have the 6 months requirement.
You refresh my memory, our memory on what it takes to pursue a landlord certificate. What does that entail? What is?
You're required to file if you rent to a person for 30 days or more.
Okay.
And it's mostly used under our current system for purposes of helping track the renter rebate or renter credit rather. To look at the landlord certificate and then look at the claim for a renter credit and you compare the two. Do we have a landlord that said, yes, they rented from me? We have a person who claimed a credit, they match. Okay, this person qualifies for renter credit. That's the point of the landlord certificate. My understanding from what I've heard from tax in the past is that they think they have about 80% compliance at the moment with landlord certificate filings.
Way up.
So there's, 20% of landlords aren't doing that, which means when tax receives a renter credit claim and there's no company landlord certificate, they have to go and
So if you don't file one
Find out.
now, you're looked at as a short-term rental under the
Yeah.
bill.
Yes,
That's
and
a powerful motivator.
it is. And may I add, Madam Chair, I think you and Senator Brock were on the committee when we added a lot of data collection to the landlord certificate that VHFA uses to figure out what rental levels are.
Where
Yes, the landlord certificate is become more important since we passed that in order to confidentially transmit landlord information on market rents, et cetera, so we can figure
I
out.
thought we took rent off because,
No, we left rent on.
okay, because I know they were concerned that
It's all
they
confidential.
wouldn't get it reported.
Mhm.
So Kirby, this wouldn't address the situation of that, I think the chair has outlined a few times of somebody having a home that they rent for 30 days and then the other 35 days, they just have it as their second home.
Oh, it's their second home.
Because if they can do this, if they file all these things.
This
that-
would have the potential of turning what you might think of as a second home into non-homestead, non-residential.
Yeah,
As long
That would be
as long as it's a
pretty
30-day.
it would be super easy. Everybody would do it.
So I guess what I'd say is the reason I have landlord certificate in here is because you should still move all long-term rental policy in a congruent way. If you think somehow it's harder to rent for someone for 3 months and make it up or 6 months, go ahead and write other language. But there's nothing in the language that makes it harder to do it for 6 months or 3 months or 1 month.
So is this?
This is
all
the
of your
proposal. Yes, I have some like mild concerns with other sections, but I have not tried to touch them.
Okay, so I think.
Wait, I don't think I understand. I mean, because this would not it would allow somebody to rent for 30 days and then have it as their second home for the rest of the year. Yes.
Yes.
So can we change it to so that they have to add language that says that they have to have rented it at least 6 months out of the 12 months?
That's underneath. That would be yours.
No,
B is actually articulating that a lot of people rent seasonally. And this is about farm worker housing essentially from Ways and Means cleanup. And it kind of demonstrates that we have a market that functions on largely like people thinking about 2 to 3 to 4 months stays somewhere. And
Largely, Keisha, what's the percentage
what's the percentage of what?
of those?
Of rentals that.
You're saying it's largely.
We asked for that information on the landlord certificate because we don't have it. So we know that actually a majority of rental agreements are informal. We've been talking about landlord tenant law all session, and most landlord tenant agreements are not written in such a way that it says they're being rented for 6 months or more.
I understand. I just wouldn't categorize it as,
I'm speaking from the housing policy expertise that we use every day.
Okay,
and you're saying that largely in the state of Vermont, people rent less. Say again, say what you're saying.
That a majority of rental agreements are not formalized for a certain period of time.
Right.
So we can't say that
have
somebody
rules.
rents just 1 month. They might rent month to month. They might rent for a year at a time. but most agreements do not spell out a number of.
Okay, but the intent is people do things with leases and week-to-week leases, in part in response to the ability to remove or keep a good tenant, all right? You may start out with a probationary the first 30 days. But the intent is, I'm renting this for the long term. I'm looking for long-term income. Short-term rental, the intent is, I am only renting it for 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 weeks at a time in ski season. I do not want, nor do I intend to rent it for 6 months.
Madam Chair, if I may, there are a lot of short-term rentals, and this we started to see in the data, where they rent for 2 months for part of the year, 3 days and another, they rent for graduation on one end. and winter on the other.
But that is a short-term rental.
It's not, if you rent for 3 months for part of the year, that would be a long-term rental.
Okay. If you have data, send it to us.
Okay, I'll ask Maureen.
And then I want to go, so that's the change. Yeah, let me see if I can get it up, because I'm having trouble reading it up there.
I'm gonna zoom in.
Let's see what I've got.
I will flag for you, that subdivision B here is the same language that's in the bill, and that language is to clarify that in situations where there's employer provided housing, including farm worker housing, that even if it doesn't meet all of the requirements up top, that would still not receive the second home rate. Like, that's what that language is.
Right, that's already in the bill.
It's
So this
already,
bill doesn't address the situation of somebody using their second home for a very short-term rental and calling it out.
I would actually flag that if you want to proceed with this, that you might want to change the language. The language below is intentionally meant to match up with the 6 months. So that's why there's a 6 month requirement below. But if you want to switch to 30 days, maybe you should switch the bottom part to 30 days.
I don't want to switch to 30 days. I think 30 days is short.
Yeah.
And this language doesn't address that. This language leaves it open to every single second home in the state will rent their house for 30 days in order to avoid the tax.
If I may, Madam Chair, we did just reconfirm our definition of a property transfer tax. Second home using the landlord certificate for the homestead declaration, then trying to build on it with an idea of what a bona fide landlord tenant agreement is. We are seeing compliance, and tax can get at the exceptions to compliance without affecting everybody else.
Once I buy that house,
Mhm.
I might live in it for a year. No, don't think I'm getting any bills. Maybe we'll get 727 out.
Maybe
I'll check back in a
650.
bit.
Okay. I'll see when the stress in here gets to be too much. Okay, but property transfer tax is a one-time thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And personally, if we go to this, I think I'd like to get rid of that, but that.
Property transfer tax?
Yeah, but
Well, let's
no,
get rid
the add-on,
Oh,
all right? No, I'm not getting rid of the property transfer tax, and I know the realtors are sitting.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
question, and you may have discussed this before I came back into the room. Have we discussed item 3, 75% of fair market rent?
no, we haven't. discussed it.
Where do we get that from?
So, I think I think we should look again at the definition of second home tax for the property transfer tax. Because I was trying to help with this notion that the committee wanted to close a loophole for family members who rent to other family members.
Mhm.
But in reality, that is an allowable landlord tenant agreement. We would have to get very deep into which family members are okay to rent or not, and what housing law does, so that you can't gift your children a house is requires that they pay just below 1% below Federal Reserve interest rate levels. So you can't hand your children a house, you can't even hand them.
You can do a sweetheart.
So the ultra wealthy will always be able to figure out some tax loopholes. This is
It's not a
saying,
tax loophole. It's perfectly legal. You can do a sweetheart or deed to your kids. They are now owners of your house.
they have to pay capital gains.
Not if it's a family member. They don't have to do property transfer, not until they take possession, they would have to pay capital gains. But when you transfer, what is it, the Lady Bird, your kids can be on your deed as.
If it's your primary residence.
Your primary.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so right, so that's only for your primary residence.
Yes,
If your kids buy you another home, that's not your primary residence. They cannot simply hand it to you, and they cannot give you a 0 interest loan for it. They have to give you a relatively fair market loan for that. So this is my attempt to mirror that for the middle class who are more likely to not have paid off a house entirely with a large chunk of money. They're more likely to be,
how did we get to inheriting housing?
because the idea being that we don't have something called a bona fide landlord tenant agreement. So if you want to get at someone renting to their child for $1, this is saying 1,200 instead of 1,400.
With
So
all due respect,
75% of
Senator, you
fair
have
market.
not been in here for all of our discussions, and you are blowing up a bill that is not in your jurisdiction. And this is,
Can I just
you have
get
not
my
been here
question
for the
that was
whole
on the floor
conversation.
answered first before we move
I
to
think
something
that
else?
would be good. I thought it had been answered.
No, it hasn't been answered. My
Okay.
question was, where does the 75% of fair market rent come from the municipality?
I'll probably answer it for you. The way this is written, the Department of Taxes would have, if they decide. Like, basically, it would be if a person makes that claim,
Mhm.
right? And when they file their dwelling use attestation. And the Department of Taxes questions that, it would be on them to have to come up with that number.
So would they have, in effect, have an appraiser for the market rent for that particular property in that municipality?
I'm imagining more like it's like PBR will do some kind of analysis. It would not be easy.
No,
And
that's my
it
point.
could be
It
up
would
for
not be
debate
easy.
and-
This is, it seems to be an overly complex solution.
So
To a
if the
problem-
market value
So I'm happy to take it out and just say it's rented from
house and.
a person to a person.
Yeah.
This was to get at the concern that someone might rent it to another
So
person
if
for
the
$1.
person rents it to another person and rents it for below what is market value, how, you're not gonna get it appraised at every single time, every single.
Well, we do
and
have
Put that on the
information.
municipality.
Okay, what we're
So my
trying,
question is, how would that be done? And where would the number be?
I don't think it would be based on appraisal value, it'd be based off of what current rental rates are for the municipality and special, and they.
And for property of that type and of that
Yeah.
condition, and who would determine that?
It would be on the department with this.
The department. Now, does the department have the resources to do that, given the number of rentals that we have?
I think the question is this an easier metric to meet than trying to figure out if somebody has a bona fide landlord tenant agreement or not, which is not defined.
It's relationship, I agree. But-
Yeah.
okay,
My sense is
Yeah.
from looking at this, that this is again, a burden that's being placed on the department with no resources allocated to do it. We have no idea the size of that burden, the frequency with which it would be used. And to put this in law at this point with a total absence of information, I don't think makes sense.
So Senator Matos did say kind of quietly, HUD already has this figure. So we have fair market rent and AMI, area median income for most areas because HUD, Section 8 and other housing programs
Mhm.
use that so much.
Do they use that 75% figure? Or do they use fair
They
market,
can
what they
tell-
think is fair market value?
they can tell you what the average rent, we use that for the renter rebate.
Do we know if that's a valid
I
number?
think we're not
If that
looking,
reflects
yeah.
reality?
I don't think what they're looking for is dollar for dollar. It's looking for, I'm going to rent it to you for $10 a month.
Yeah.
I don't care if you ever live in it, but for $10 a month, maybe you can come for a weekend and I get my, for $60, I've rented it for 3 months. I think that's what you're trying to
Yeah.
avoid.
If you're trying to close a loophole, we need to know what loophole we're closing.
Okay,
Well, we also need, if we put a number in statute like that, that it has to be equal to more than such and such. We have to know where we got that number from and be able to reproduce it or be able to have somebody use it. And I'm not sure that that number is reasonably or readily available, for example,
It is.
to the people that
yeah,
have to calculate.
It is.
use it
So-
for the renter rebate.
Yeah.
All right, so.
And Julia's nodding. I don't want to put her on the spot,
Okay.
but this is a number that is common in housing policy
All right,
for.
and it's commonly, and so it
standards.
is commonly available to the public?
Yes, and in fact, I'm often looking up, what's the area median income in this county, or what's the fair market rent in this county? So there's sometimes by like area, so like Franklin, we talked about this, Franklin and Chittenden get lumped
Yeah, I
together.
remember that. The fair market rent you're talking about, though,
Mhm.
is it gross or in applicable to the particular property? Because some properties are obviously worth 3 or 4 or 5 times more in rent than other
I
properties.
think it's by number of bedrooms.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Well, Randy
It's not-
has the 4 right now.
Okay, is Rand getting?
And then I am about, we have.
No,
I
I'm not
think from
particularly
now
happy with the
on,
answer.
we're
Um,
going
Quite
to-
frankly.
JFO could answer this way.
We've got,
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we've got the intention
It's an
of the
answerable
maker of the
question.
amendment. From now on, I think we're going to send questions about the legal cause and, questions about their ability to do it should go to the tax department. Questions about legal issues should go to the legal department. And I'm going to thank Senator Ron Hinsdale for bringing this to us. And we can finish up our discussion, okay? So I think, so the proposal as I have it is we're on page 100 and we are still on, this is still on 100 and still on the definition of long-term rental. And we've got that it is at least 30 days. Now, we could say for the intention of this tax, for taxing, it has to be at least 60 days or 90 days, right? I mean, we could define in this chapter, long-term rental is anything between 1 and 6 months, pick a number. What we're doing is we're trying to avoid the loopholes we've been talking about, which is I rented to my cousin for $10. He comes up, he goes skiing for 1 weekend, and I now have a long-term rental. The 60 days, so this bill says it has to be rented for at least 60 days, right? 6 months,
30
days and months, 6 months.
Combined.
Okay. But I pretty much need to have it rented the rest of the year. I doubt there may be a few, maybe the Blue House kind of thing, but most are somewhat shorter than 6 months if I'm going to live in it. So this is picking up. This is my primary residence. I go to Florida for 5 months and I rent it out to a college student or a legislator or whatever, a traveling nurse.
Doesn't that qualify you as a second home anyway?
No, that is not a second home. I think
It would though.
we haven't even gotten into second homes. This is the definition between short-term and long-term rental for the purposes of taxing. If you are long-term rental, you are taxed as a non-homestead, non-residential property. You're an apartment building. Even if you're a single home, and Kirby's. Give me a thumbs down if I'm off on this. What we're getting involved in is how do we determine short-term rentals? That's where most of the I haven't had a second homeowner really get upset with me, except people who have a second home, but they rent it out short-term. They don't live in it. They own a second house. It's not, they don't live in it, ever. They rent it out short-term. Or they rent out, a wing of the house. They rent, but it seems to mostly be people that rent out houses. We know, I think it's 7 towns that have a lot of short-term rentals. There's Burlington and things around ski areas. In those areas, it's had an impact on the ability of full-time residents to afford homes. Because the values are up and people from out of state will buy up a home for more than the residents can. And will use it to go skiing. Or maybe in the summer they'll rent it out. For how long do we have summer? 2 months? 2 months, 3 months to somebody that wants to go hiking or vice versa. It's that short-term rental that we are trying to define. We could just punt and say rentals are all non-homestead, non-residential, and we could have this fight in conference. Or we can let this ride. I'm gonna.
I actually would like a break so I can talk to Kirby, because I need to make sure I'm understanding
Let's
things.
do